So apparently, Cole Palmer might want to join Manchester United. Apparently, he is unhappy with his current situation at Chelsea, and apparently, he is unhappy with the lack of vision at the club. And apparently, he's homesick and he wants to come back to Manchester. He wants to join his boyhood club, Manchester United. That's a lot to unpack because Cole Palmer, wow, like a whole Cole Palmer, like a whole package, like Cole Palmer pause. But bro, like that's actually like crazy news. And obviously, just like anything, it's just rumors, but there's a lot to unpack with it still. So let's talk about it real quick. So Cole Palmer, you know, a player who I love, a player who, if you know me, you know how much I love him, you know how much I respect him, you know how good I think he is. And a player who is not doing so well at the moment, let's be real, Cole Palmer is not doing so great at the moment. He came back from his injury. He's been like stop start. I know he scored when he came back against Everton, but it's been here and there. He hasn't really been the greatest. And a lot of people are taking that to mean that Palmer is kind of like a one season wonder. And I just I've never been able to get behind the whole Palmer is a one season wonder thing. I know obviously it became a bit more recent, but it was people also said it last season as well. But in general, like I just can't believe that Palmer is a one season wonder. I'm so sorry, but I know what I saw in that 2024 season, one of the best debut campaigns I've ever seen in a Premier League season. Like I'm being so real, like one of the best debut seasons. I mean, there's Haaland, there's Bruno in his first full season, but that was one of the greatest like debut campaigns I've ever seen. Like no jokes whatsoever. Like Palmer did his thing that 2024 season, and he was one of the best players in the league, if not the best player. In my opinion, he was the best player in the league. In my opinion, Palmer became the best player in the league after that season, right? And people take that season and they look at it like, oh, Palmer is a one season wonder. Like, oh, he just did it that one season, right? And that's the way it looks right now. But let me tell you that that's just not true. Like, first off, let's start with the 24-25 season. Like, look at the way Palmer started that season. Like, Palmer started on a hot run, on the hottest run. Like, not even just looking like one of the best players in the league, looking like one of the best players in the world. That's the type of run that he was on. Like, he had Chelsea looking like title contenders. Like, let's be real. Like, that Chelsea team was not a team of title contenders, but Palmer had them looking like title contenders. That's the type of player that Palmer is. Palmer is a difference maker. Palmer can make your team look better than they are. Like the Bruno type player, that's the type of player that Palmer is. A Nico Paz type player, that's the type of player that Palmer is. I'm telling you that Palmer is not a one season wonder. Palmer is a game changer. Palmer is a team changer. Palmer is a destiny changer. I know it sounds like I'm glazing right now, but I'm just being real. And yeah, like he was good. He was doing well in the 24-25 season. Up until like I'll say around that December time, and he kind of fell off. And when he fell off, Chelsea's hopes of like, oh, Chelsea's talked about being title contenders kind of fell off as well. They started losing games, started drawing games, and it just wasn't looking good for them anymore. And then for the rest of the season, I think Palmer got injured. He was a stop start, that type of thing, and yeah, he just never really came back into form. But then you now go into the Club World Cup, and then you see Palmer at his best again. You go into the Club World Cup final against the treble winning PSG side, and you see Palmer at his best. You see Palmer basically shut down PSG. Palmer shut down PSG on his own. Yes, Chelsea had a good performance that game. Yes, other players had good performances, but Palmer shut down PSG on his own. Palmer did his thing on his own, and that was the best player in the league. I was watching the best player in the league. I know there's a lot of contenders for that title. I know that title is kind of like spread all the time. Sometimes they say it's Foden when he's on form. They say it's Bruno sometimes. Man United fans, us, they say it's Haaland, all these guys. But Palmer, for me, maybe you know what? Maybe I'm even being too. Maybe not the best player in the league, but I know that like he's building up to be the best player in the league, and I know that Palmer is like just great, and I know that Palmer is not a one season wonder. I know that for a fact because I know what I'm seeing. I know what I've seen. And I know that Palmer is not a one season wonder. Now he has started this season a bit poor. He came back from injury. He didn't start with them and everything, and now he has started the season a bit poor. And it's just like game in, game out, he gets like subbed out. It doesn't look as important to Chelsea as he did before. And people are even talking about like the word outside of Stamford Bridge from like Chelsea fans and everything is that like Palmer might not even be as important to the project as he once was, because now they're looking at like Estoval as like the new star of the project. Like is Estoval now. It's not about Palmer. Palmer can be involved, if he starts doing this thing again. Obviously, Palmer starts doing this thing again, like nobody's going to talk about it, right? But Estoval is like the the main guy in the project and everything. You know, young talent, he has kind of shown himself and everything. And you know, I mean, it's their life, right? Like they can do what they want. If they want Esteban to be the star, if they want Garnacho to freaking be the star, if they want any other players to be the star, they can be the star. So if they don't want Palmer to be the star anymore, if they don't believe that Palmer can be the star anymore, then that's fair enough. But with all of that is going on, with like, you know, Palmer's basically lack of importance, with him basically being unhappy with his current situation, apparently the reports are saying that he wants to move to Manchester United. And you know, Manchester United is his boyhood club. I know he came from Man City, but you know that thing goes, like he play for whoever, but Manchester United is his boyhood club. There's a picture of him in the Manchester United jersey. I think it was the 11-12 jersey. And obviously there's probably more pictures out there that we haven't seen and everything, but he's a boyhood Manchester United fan. A lot of us know that already, right? And yeah, with Palmer coming to Manchester United potentially, right? Like it's not as easy as ABC, right? Like there's a lot of things. There's the price, where would he play, where's Palmer's best position, stuff like that. Like there's so many things to unpack with Palmer potentially coming to Manchester United. Like we're talking in hypotheticals here. We're not talking about like Palmer is joining Manchester United. Let's talk in hypotheticals. If Palmer were to join Manchester United, I think there's so many things that come with it, and I think we have to talk about it. I think the first thing I want to talk about, number one, and the most obvious thing, is the price. The thing that kind of limits a lot of deals from happening. How much would Chelsea realistically charge for Palmer? Because we know that Chelsea, they be holding their players to like lifelong contracts, as per like, I think Palmer signed, what was he, an 8-year contract? His contract running to 2033 or something like that, like some crazy number like that. And that's the type of thing that Chelsea do, right? So they have no obligation to release him this season, next season, next season, next season, next season, next season, next season. That's why they have no obligation whatsoever. Obviously, if they feel like he's not happy, if they feel like, you know, that he's not really part of their plans anymore, then they'll be more willing to release him, but they'll still charge a hefty fee. Like we saw what they did with Mason Mount, we saw what they did with Havertz. Like we've seen how much they charge for their players even when they don't feel like having them anymore. Now the thing with Palmer is that, unlike Mount and unlike Havertz, I actually feel like Palmer is worth the money. Is he worth that money to Manchester United? Let's talk about that. But I think that Palmer, what they might potentially charge will be worth it, because I don't think they'll charge 120 million or something like that. Like that's like exact money. That's worth money. That's like, this player is important to my club, but you know, like I still want him to be the main man of the project. But you know, like if he wants to go, let him go, kind of thing. But this is now like, we know that this player is not happy, so like, let's reduce that fee. Like let's cut down that unhappy fee, right? Let's cut it down because of that unhappy tax and make it like, I'll say 80 to 90 million. I'll say maybe 80 to 90 million. I'm seeing some things about like his potential swap during the equation as well. I don't know what that's about, but I'm just like, I'll say 80, 85, a crisp, I'll say a crisp, like maybe 80 plus 10 million add-ons, something like that, something crazy like that, like some add-ons that like will probably happen. Like they won't allow like any, oh, if he wins Ballon d'Or kind of thing, like don't allow that, like some crazy add-ons like that, like just something, maybe the amount of goals that he scores, the amount of games that he plays, something like that, like some add-ons like that. But I can see a world where Manchester United kind of like try to bring that down. I don't think they'll be able to bring that down by too much, but I can see a world where they say like, oh, 75 million plus 10 million add-ons, and Chelsea is like, you guys are driving like a tough bargain and everything, but you know what, fair enough. Like he doesn't want to be here, fair enough, right? And you know, 75 million plus 10 million add-ons, like let's just say 75 million, let's say 80 million, let's say 80 million, crisp 80 million, 85, 80 million. Should Manchester United be spending 80 million on another attacker when there's a lot of areas of the pitch that we need to like work on, right? Like, you know, we just bought Mbeumo, we just bought Sesko, we just bought Konya, we have Ahmad, we have talent in our attack, right? Like obviously, like, is the numbers are becoming more limited because, you know, Zexi might leave, Hoyland is gone, Anthony is gone, Rashford, we don't know what's going to happen with him, so the numbers are becoming like less and less. So having a player like Palmer will actually be cool. We don't know what's going to happen with Bruno. I want Bruno to renew his contract. I was never behind the whole let Bruno go, even when Amorim was here. And yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with any of these players, right? Like except for, you know, the front three that we just signed, we don't know what's going to happen with any of our players. Maybe Ahmad as well. We know what's going to happen. Bruno, Zexi, Hoyland, Anthony, Rashford, whoever it is, that all we don't like. Are probably they might be gone, except for Bruno. Bruno is like the most likely to stay, but all these guys might be gone. So it's like, okay, so would having a player like Palmer, like a quality player like Palmer, is that going to be a good addition? And I think it can be. You know, I think like not even just Bruno might potentially leave or anything. I don't think he's going to leave. I think he's going to renew his contract or whatever. But let's just say Bruno might potentially leave. But it's not even about that. It's about like having his successor potential. It's about having the next best thing. Like you know, Bruno is the best thing what's the next best thing, Palmer. But let's just say that Bruno renews his contract. I doubt it'll be for like 3-4 years or anything like that. Like it's going to be like 2 years. We have his successor there, right? So like it would be nice to have a player like Palmer in your team, right? So I think that that's something that we can look into, like potentially investing in Bruno's successor, right? Like that's one thing that we can look into, and having him there while Bruno is there. That's something that a lot of big teams do, right? Like Madrid, whoever it is, that's something they do. Want to have a successor at the club, so let's get him at the club before that person actually leaves. Like they get them in before like they actually leave, and that's the best thing to do because they get the chance to like teach them and just like show them the ropes, show them the culture of the club, and just like be there while the best, like one of the best players in the world is playing. Watch them, learn from them, see how they play for this club, right? Like that's a very good thing to do. So I think that that's something that Manchester United can potentially look into doing. So in general, like, does it make sense to spend that amount of money on Palmer? Potentially, yes. Like, there's not a lot of like by the time Bruno potentially leaves one day, it's not might not be this season, might not be next season, but when Bruno leaves one day, one of the hardest things ever is going to be replacing him. And who better to replace him with than a player that like has shown to also be like a destiny changer, because that's what Bruno is. Bruno is a destiny changer. Bruno changed Manchester United destiny. Bruno makes Manchester United a 5th, 6th place team when they should be like a 10th, 11th place team, right? When Bruno is not playing at his best, Manchester United are not playing at their best. When Bruno is not out in it, like Manchester United are not in it. Like if Bruno is not doing his thing, I'm telling you that Manchester United will not be where they are. Like under Amorim, Bruno was not really doing his thing, and you saw a Manchester United where, like, obviously, like, we did better last season, we did better this season and everything, but still, like, if Bruno was playing at his best, I can promise you that we'll be higher up the table. I can promise you that people will not be complaining the way they were complaining. And Bruno is that like destiny changer, and I feel like Palmer can be the destiny changer as well. We saw it with Chelsea, like they won a Conference League, they won a Club World Cup. I don't think that Chelsea were a Club World Cup winning team. I don't think Chelsea were a team to beat PSG in a Club World Cup final, but Palmer made it so, right? And like I said, it sounds like I'm glazing, but I'm just being real, right? So yes, I think there can be a good investment. You see, I love Palmer, and in my head is a good investment. Like in my head, like Palmer, like I said, is on track to be like the best player in the league, right? So it makes sense to me, right? But it has to make sense to everybody. But I think that it can make sense. I think that 80 million for the future makes sense, right? But it's now like, okay, you sign Palmer, whatever, yada yada yada. Where does he play, right? Because if you look at like Amorim's system, like he would have played in that like right calm or whatever it is. But it's like, okay, where does Mbeumo play? Maybe Amorim moves into strike, Cunha plays next to him, something like that. Says cool. We rotating with whoever it is, whether it's Mbeumo in strike, Cunha in strike, whoever it is, right? Like, so there would have been a place in that Amorim system, right? But like the word around this thing now is that like, where does Palmer play when it is not that type of formation, right? Like, where does he play in a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 or whatever it is? Where does Palmer play? Because they have like right now they're playing Palmer in calm, right? Like they're playing Palmer in calm. They play Pedro Neto, Estoval on the right wing, Garnacho, Gittins on the left wing, João Pedro and whoever, Liam Delap and strike and everything. They play Palmer in calm, and I've always said this, that I don't think that Palmer is a calm. I think that Palmer has calm tendencies, but I don't think that he's a calm, and that's a problem with a lot of teams and like the way they kind of like profile players. I feel like people need to learn the difference between like a player with tendencies and a player's actual position. Like just because a winger has calm tendencies doesn't mean that he is a calm, right? Like he can do the whole drifting inside, he can do the whole getting into pockets of space, he can do the whole creating chances from the middle kind of thing, but it doesn't mean that he's a calm. And it doesn't just apply to like these winger ex-calm players. Like it applies to so many other things. Like I feel like the same thing happened with like strikers as well, where they're like, oh, a striker that is like technically gifted, then he has to be like a winger, or he can be a winger kind of thing. I feel like the first name that comes to my head is like Martial, right? Like we spend so much time thinking, oh, where's Martial's best position? Is he a striker or is he a winger? Martial was a striker. I don't think that Martial was a winger. I think he could play wing. I think he could do a job at wing. I think he had winger tendencies. I think he had the what's it called, the build. I think he had this pace. I think he had the skills to play on the wing. But I don't think that Martial was a winger. I think that Martial was a striker, but because he had winger tendencies, because he used to drift to the left and everything, then he's probably a winger. Isaac, when he first came to the Premier League as well, they tried to make him like a a winger at first. I know that at that time Callum Wilson was kind of like doing his thing, so they wanted to make it work for both of them. But Isaac was never a winger. I watched him at Real Sociedad. Isaac was never a winger, but they tried to deal with Isaac as well. They played him on the left wing. Sometimes he looked like he walked. Right? I remember that assist against Everton or something. Sometimes he looked like he walked. He had the skills and everything, but just because he had winger tendencies doesn't mean that he's a winger. Just because he can do the whole drifting to the left thing, all of that, yada yada yada, doesn't mean that he's a winger. And I feel like that's the same thing with Palmer. I feel like Palmer has kind of, he does his thing the way he does it and everything, and everybody's like, oh, Palmer is probably like a calm, right? Like, more of a calm than he is a winger. But I think it's the other way around. I think that Palmer is more of a winger than he is a calm. And I just think that sometimes like people have this idea in their head of what a player should look like in a certain position. Like they have this idea that, a like this setting, like if a player is like this tall, for example, like he has to be like, if a striker is this tall, he has to be a hold up striker. Like if a striker is 6'4", he has to be like a hold up striker. Like that's what they try to do with Haaland, when in reality Haaland is a transition striker, right? Like I feel like they just have this conception in their head of what a player should look like in each position. And that's the same thing with like a winger. They have this conception that like, a winger has to be pacey, a winger has to be able to like bomb down the wing kind of thing. A winger just has to be like full on like skillful. Like I know Palmer is skillful, but I mean like more like Doku skillful than like, Palmer's like dribbling, gliding kind of skillful. Like that's more dribbling. Doku is like skillful. Vinny is skillful, right? But like it doesn't have to be like that. Like that's like, you don't just say a player is this, so he has to be this, or a player is that, so he has to be that. I don't think that Palmer is so limited to, oh, he doesn't have the pace and everything, so he can't be a winger. Like I feel like sometimes in the Premier League especially, I feel like they have this conception that like, a player has to be a certain build, a certain like pace level, like he has to have this certain amount of skill sets to be in this certain position. And that can now come down to like the demands of the Premier League and what they need from players in each position, right? But at the same time, like just because a player doesn't have this certain ability doesn't mean that he can't play in that position. Doesn't mean that that's not his favorite position. Palmer, his best season at Chelsea was in the right wing. That 2024 season was playing the right, allowed to invert and do his thing. The best times I've seen Palmer is when he's allowed to play in the right. Like when he play in the right, maybe they put Enzo Fernandez in calm and whoever it is on the left, whoever it is in strike. But Palmer on the right, being allowed to like invert into the game, being allowed to like, drop into pockets of space, and also being able to hold that width on the right sometimes. I think that's when Palmer is at his best. I think that's when Palmer is at his free flowing best. And I think that like, people need to learn that. I'm not saying that that's the only reason why Palmer hasn't been doing so well. I think there's multiple reasons why he hasn't been doing so well, but I think that that's a good reason. I think that that's one of the main reasons. And with Chelsea right now, they have Estoval, like I said, they have Pedro Neto, they have all these guys, so that like maybe they're thinking as well, like are we going to bench Estoval and Pedro Neto when we can just play Palmer in calm, right? Like he has calm tendencies. Why not just play him in calm so these other guys can play? But at the same time, like, don't you want to get the best out of your best player? Like, because if it's me, I'm always going to be thinking about my best player. I'm always going to be thinking about trying to get the best out of my best player, because the most important thing is that I get the best out of my best player, and then all the other players, like, whatever it is. If I even need to play Estoval or Pedro Neto in calm just to get the best out of Palmer, I'll do that, right? Like, I'll do whatever it takes to get the best out of my best player, because I've seen what happens when I get the best out of my best player. That's where I feel about Palmer. That's where I feel about players like Bruno. Like, that's why I said with Amorim, right? Like, if you're not getting the best out of your best players with your system, then your system is a failing system. That's what I feel. I feel like if you don't work your system around your best players to get the best out of them, then your system is already a failing system. Because like the fact that Bruno could not play at his best, we saw Bruno against Man City, the fact that he could not do that type of thing on a constant basis because of his position on the pitch, it means that your system was a failing system. I'll never say that like, oh, Amorim's formation in general was just wrong. I'll never say that like, oh, Amorim had no idea what he was doing. But I would say that he's like his unwillingness to kind of adapt to like, the best players at the club. I'm not saying that he needs to adapt to every single person at the club, but like you have Bruno Fernandes at the club who doesn't necessarily fit whatever you're trying to do, right? He had these good games in that deeper position and everything, but overall he couldn't do Bruno things in that position, and he decided not to like, switch it up just a bit, just to make sure that Bruno himself, at least, even if you want to see F Manu, F every other person, let me get the best out of Bruno Fernandes. You could even do that for Bruno Fernandes. Then I feel like your system is a failing system. I feel like that's how it is. Like, you have to get the best out of your best players. And with Palmer, I feel like you do need to get the best out of him. And in my opinion, Palmer's best position in a 4-2-3-1, play him on the right, that's his best position, right? That's what I feel for Palmer. But Yeah, so it's like if it comes to Manchester United, where does he play? Because we have a lot of players in that position. Like it's so crazy because once upon a time, Manchester United were struggling on the right hand side. Like we're thinking, oh, who's going to play on the right every time? Sometimes we play Rashford, we sign Sancho to play on the right, but apparently he's a left winger kind of thing. Like we had a problem on the right. Like for so long, we did not have right-sided attackers. Like for so long, it's actually crazy how long we went without having like right-sided attackers. But now we have like an overflow of right-sided attackers. Like we have an overflow of players who favor the right. Like we have Mbeumo, we have Ahmad, and now we have Shelisi, a player coming from the academy, right? Like he also favors the right. He's a right winger, and it's like wow, like that's actually crazy because once upon a time we had nobody, and now we have an abundance, right? And now we're looking at Palmer, who another player that favors the right. So it's like where does he play in the midst of all these players? Like what happens with Ahmad? What happens with Mbeumo? What happens with Sesko as well? Like because I feel like moving in Bremer out of position kind of affects Sesko as well. So what happens with all these players, right? And that's something we have to talk about because I feel like Palmer potentially coming. Obviously, he's not going to come as a bench player, especially if he spend that amount of money. He's not coming as a bench player. It means that like he's going to be a starter. So it's like where does he play in the midst of all these players? And what happens with like players like Shelisi who are coming out of the academy and everything? What does that mean? But I think that with Palmer coming potentially, like I said, 4-2-3-1 playing on the right and everything, like we saw in the Man City game, that also means that like Mbeumo might have to move to strike. And I know that that strike thing. The thing with it is that it depends on the game. Like for Mbeumo, like if is it a game where transition game, balls in behind kind of thing, then I think that yes, Mbeumo in strike does make sense. But different type of game, different type of thing. So I think that some games, low block and everything, you don't play Mbeumo in strike, you play Sesko in strike. I think that if Palmer comes, there'll be heavy rotation, right? Like I feel like, okay, this game we're playing a transition game and everything, playing against a high line. Let's play Mbeumo in strike. But if I play like a low block, we need crosses into the box and everything. Maybe start Mbeumo or Palmer, whoever it is. Start Bruno if he stays. Start Palmer in the camp potentially. Start one of them on the left, maybe, I don't know. And then, play Sesko in strike or something. Play Konya in strike as well. Play Konya on the left kind of thing. Like, there's so many ways that you can switch it up and everything. But it's like, okay, what about Ahmad though? Like, Ahmad has been showing that he's good and everything. Does he still get game time and everything? That now depends. Like, there's a lot of things. It kind of depends, but I think that it does affect Ahmad more than it affects Mbeumo. Definitely. I think that it does affect Sesko even more than it affects Mbeumo. And I think that overall it affects players at the club if he does potentially join. And I think that it also makes it look like, oh, like are we going to still prioritize Bruno if Palmer joins, right? Like, if Palmer joins, are we still going to prioritize Bruno? Are we going to let him like go if he wants to go kind of thing? Because now we have another player. But again, that now makes it like, oh, Palmer is going to play calm when it comes to Manchester United. Now you can play a different type of calm if it comes to Manchester United. Like, he doesn't have to play calm the same way they played at Chelsea, but it's still calm, right? And I don't think that Palmer's best position is in calm potentially. Like, he can play calm, can do a job in calm, but I don't think that's the best position, right? But it's a lot of things, but I think it does affect players. I think it does affect Ahmad. It's like, oh, if Palmer comes, then Ahmad less game time. It does affect like Shelisi as well. Like, Shelisi is up and coming. Obviously, he doesn't have any right, like he doesn't have any like, oh, Shelisi has to play week in, week out or anything. But like with Manchester United, we want to see our next academy talent. We want to see our next academy talent like kind of like, blow. We want to see him like get game time, not week in, week out or anything, but we want to see him get game time. And having that abundance of players on the right, having Ahmad, Mbeumo, Palmer would make it so hard for a player like Shelly to kind of like break out of the academy. Maybe he goes on loan or something, but it doesn't make any difference because he's not like Palmer is not like 30 or anything, right? Where like, you just say 3 more seasons and he's gone. Palmer is 21, 22. Ahmad is like 23, 24, something like that. Mbeumo is 25, 26, something like that. Like, these players are still kind of young. So it just means that like when is he going to get his opportunity? Because like I said, we want to see Man United academy graduates. Manchester United is a club for academic graduates. Manchester United is a club that wants to see that young talent kind of go. We've seen it with Mainu, we've seen it with Garnacho, we've seen it with Rashford, we've seen it with all these players. Like, we want to see academic talents. Who is next up? Like, we're always waiting for who is next up. That's another thing that happened with Amorim, right? Like, we did not know who was next up. Yes, we were playing the Fletcher brothers and everything, but it was clear that they went next up. Like, we were just playing them out of necessity, right? Like, who is next up? Who is that guy they are building up to be the next guy for Manchester United fans to be excited about? You look at a team like Barcelona, who they always have who is next up. They always have, the La Masia players always on the pitch and everything, always playing. With Amorim, it didn't feel like much of a priority. And what scared me the most was not even that it didn't feel like a priority under Amorim. It felt like United fans were becoming comfortable with it. It felt like, anything for the success. But I just feel like there's certain prices I wouldn't pay for success, and I feel like that's one of them. Like I wouldn't sacrifice my academic talents for success. I want to sacrifice all these things for success, and it was hypothetical success as well. It wasn't like the success was assured. It wasn't as if he has shown us anything that said that he's going to be successful at Manchester United. But the fact that people were already kind of willing to sacrifice that was kind of scary for me. But that's a whole other topic for another day. The main thing now is that, like, if Palmer does come, it does stunt Shilesi as well. It does mean that you have to go on loan, which would have still been an option even if you don't sign Palmer. Like I said, this is all hypothetical, right? But even if you don't sign Palmer, Shilesi going on loan will still be an option, right? So it's like, okay, if he goes on loan, if he comes back next season, does he go on loan again? How many loans can he really go on before he decides, oh, like, just don't want me at this club, let me just get a permanent move to like one of the smaller Premier League teams, or even if I'm balling out like a big Premier League team, maybe like a Chelsea or something. Like, you never know, right? Like maybe they'll sign him to replace Palmer. You never know, right? Like all these type of things, like you never know. But yeah, I think that it does affect players at the club, but at the same time, like it will feel like an opportunistic signing where, like, Palmer wants to join Manchester United. We potentially have the money to sign him, have the resources to sign him. It might be an opportunistic signing, but you have to think about the repercussions. You have to think about the other players. You have to think about some players might have to step out of the club. You have to think about like some players are going to be unhappy with the situation going forward. And are you really willing to like make these players unhappy? And also, it also depends on the next manager as well, because we don't know who the next manager is, right? Like, does the next manager even need Cole Palmer? Does the next manager even need a calm, right? Like with Luis Enrique, does he need a calm if he's the next manager, right? Like that type of thing. I'm not saying Luis Enrique is the next manager. I'm just saying that like you can think about stuff like that. Like, does the next manager even need a calm? Does the next manager need a winger with calm tendencies? Does the next manager, like, what does he need? So right now, Carrick is our manager, is our interim manager, right? So like we know what Carrick wants, we know what Carrick needs. Is there a chance that Carrick becomes permanent manager? I don't know, but it's like, what does our next manager need? So we can't even fully talk about this without even knowing who our next manager is. Maybe our next manager comes in and he likes a winger with calm tendencies, and maybe he needs Cole Palmer in his club. Maybe it's not just even a want anymore, it's a need. Maybe he likes his when he's striker with a little bit of extra pace and he wants to play Mbeumo in strike every time, right? Like, so it's like we never know who is going to be, kind of thing. So we can only like I said, it's all hypothetical. We can only theorize right now and everything. But in general, Palmer coming in does switch up a lot of things, and I've talked about a lot of stuff, and so talked about if Palmer is like could be, it's like if he's a one season wonder, if it makes sense, the price, the repercussions in terms of the players at the club and everything. And in general, like we have to think about like, does it make sense to potentially sign Palmer? And in my head, I don't want to say that it makes sense. Like I feel that would be a very biased opinion, like because of how much I love Palmer. I don't want to say that it makes sense, but I would say that like it's something that we can definitely like really like look into, like something that we can really like just sit down and be like, this might actually make sense. Like signing the next destiny changer in Palmer, signing a young player to kind of like help us carry this club for years to come would actually be like it would be like a good investment, especially given like it's always looking as if Bruno might potentially leave one day, maybe not this season, like I said, maybe not next season even, but Bruno is going to leave one day. I think that after 2027, Bruno will probably leave. Like I feel like that 2027 Bruno will probably leave. So it's like with the talks that Bruno might potentially leave next season, let's say next season, right? Like it's like we might need another destiny changer at this club. We have Konya, we have Mbeumo, we have Sesko, we have all these guys, right? But we might need another destiny changer, and I feel like Palmer is that guy. I feel like Palmer is a destiny changer. So it's like one of those things that you can look at and be like, like this is an opportunity. He's not happy at Chelsea. This is a player that I've theorized a lot that would be perfect for Manchester United, right? So like it's an opportunity to an opportunistic signing, but it's not every opportunistic signing that you make, right? Like I don't think there's every time there's an opportunity that you take it. Like I don't think there's every time that one of the best players in the world is free that you take, because like it's like it might not fit the team, might not fit the system, might not fit anything, right? But it's also like we have to look at the future and we don't know what's going to come. But I think by the time we have our next manager, by the time we know what's going to happen with like players like Bruno, we know what's going to happen with like other players as well. I feel like that's where you cannot make an informed decision. But overall, I think that's something we can really sit down and think about. Should Palmer join Manchester United? Would that be a good sign and everything? I think can be, but we just have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys think about Manchester United potentially signing Palmer. Do you think that we should sign Palmer? Do you think that it makes sense? How much do you think we should spend on Palmer before we say no? Where does he play? Where does he fit? Is he a cam? Is he a winger? All these things are all things that we talked about. But let me know in the comments. And with that comes the end of this episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. And I hope to see you guys again next time. Safe.